Through the window of a house I designed, I watched my husband and sister-in-law laugh as they built a crib with my former protege. It wasn't just the affair that broke me. It was the realization that they were building a new family using my own blueprints, meticulously erasing me from a life I thought was mine. The foundation of my world didn't just crack that night, it turned to dust. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're tuning in from. We love seeing how our stories connect people from all around the world. Your comments and thoughts bring this community to life, and we're so grateful to have you on this journey with us. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, grab a cozy seat, maybe a cup of coffee or tea, and prepare yourself for a tale that will captivate your heart from beginning to end. Let's begin. My name is Sloan Miller, and I have always believed in the integrity of a strong foundation. In my world, the world of architecture, everything depends on it. A structure built on a flawed base is destined to collapse, no matter how beautiful its facade may be. For a decade, I had applied that same unwavering principle to my life, meticulously constructing a reality of clean lines and transparent intentions with my husband, Liam Hayes. Our partnership was, I thought, a marvel of engineering, built on shared dreams and mutual respect. Our home in the hills of Denver was a testament to this belief, a masterpiece of glass and steel we had designed together, its vast windows opening to the grandeur of the Rocky Mountains. It was more than a house, it was a living symbol of our synergy. That synergy was the engine of our firm, Miller Hayes Designs, an entity born from my creative vision and his charismatic business acumen. I was the soul of our work, the one who dreamed our structures into existence from charcoal sketches and late-night inspirations. He was the charming face, the eloquent voice that sold those dreams to the world. Our life was orderly, successful, and I believed with every fiber of my being, built on the most solid ground imaginable. That belief began to erode on a quiet Tuesday evening, the kind of unremarkable night that you never expect will become an anchor point for the rest of your life. I was in my home office, the scent of a recent rainstorm still hanging fresh in the air, deeply engrossed in the blueprints for a pro bono community center. It was a passion project, a space designed to give back, to provide a foundation for families who needed one most. My focus was absolute, a state of creative immersion I cherished, until a notification chimed softly on my tablet. It was an automated email alert from our company's primary credit card account, flagging a transaction for an unusually large sum at a boutique I'd never heard of. Bambini Bellissimi. The name, Italian for beautiful babies, sent a cold wave washing over me, a feeling so alien it took a moment to identify. We had no children. After years of quiet heartbreak and sterile doctor's offices, it was a chapter of our lives we had mutually, if sorrowfully, agreed to close. The charge was an anomaly, a hairline crack appearing in the perfect polished surface of my life. In the days that followed, that single crack began to spiderweb across my consciousness, revealing other fissures I had conveniently ignored. I started seeing our life through a new, unwelcome lens of suspicion. There were the phone calls Liam would abruptly end the moment I entered a room, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur before he'd hang up with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. His weekend business trips, once a rarity, became a frequent occurrence, always to meet with supposed clients whose names were vague and whose deals never seemed to materialize. His explanations were always smooth, polished, and utterly devoid of the enthusiastic detail he once shared about his work. He was building walls where there had once been open windows. His sister, Jenna, also became a prominent figure in this unsettling new landscape. Her relationship with me had always been cordial but cool, the kind of strained politeness reserved for an in-law who was tolerated but never fully embraced. She saw me as an outsider who had married into the success she felt was her brother's alone. But recently, her affection had become cloying and suffocating. Her hugs lingered a fraction too long. Her questions about my well-being were delivered with a saccharine sweetness that felt like a poorly worn mask. She would squeeze my arm at family gatherings, telling me how lucky Liam was to have such a supportive wife, all while her eyes held a glint of something I couldn't decipher, something akin to pity, or worse, secret knowledge. Secret. I realized then that the truth would not be offered to me. I would have to excavate it myself, digging through the layers of pleasantries and lies. My desire was no longer for peace, but for clarity, no matter how devastating it might be. I stopped asking the direct questions he could so easily deflect and started looking for answers in the architecture of our shared life, in the places he would never expect me to look. My investigation began not with his phone or his emails, those were too obvious, too easily explained away. It began with something far more mundane and revealing the GPS location history on the sleek company car he preferred to drive. It was a tool for business, for tracking assets and mileage, but I was about to repurpose it for a much more personal audit of our partnership. On a Friday night, while Liam was supposedly at a downtown networking dinner with a potential investor, the tracking app on my phone painted a very different picture. The car was not in the city center. It was parked on a quiet residential street in a suburb I barely knew, a place of sprawling lawns and family homes. The address meant nothing to me, a random string of numbers on a street I'd never traveled. I sat in my own car in our silent garage for a long time, the engine off, the darkness amplifying the frantic, painful beating of my heart. A voice inside screamed at me to let it go, to accept his lie and preserve the beautiful facade. But the architect in me, the part that demanded truth and structure, refused. With a resolve I didn't know I possessed, I started the engine and drove toward the unknown. The neighborhood was serene, a postcard of domestic tranquility that felt like a mockery. I parked at the end of the block, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white, and walked through the crisp night air, each step feeling heavier than the last. And then I saw it. The house stood out from the others, not just because of its striking modern design, but because it was hauntingly familiar. It was one of ours, a design I had personally poured my heart into 2 years prior, celebrated in architectural journals for its innovative use of space and light. My signature, my creative DNA was in its every angle and every beam. Through the large, uncurtained living room window, a scene was playing out that felt like a personal violation, a desecration of my work. There was Liam, my husband, laughing with an unburdened ease I hadn't seen from him in years. Next to him, beaming with a proprietary pride, was Jenna, and with them, holding a small, delicate baby blanket, was a young woman I recognized with a sickening jolt, Chloe, a brilliant intern I had personally mentored, a young architect whose career I had championed, seeing a reflection of my own younger self in her passion. The three of them were not just talking, they were joyfully assembling a clean white baby crib. The sight was so surreal, so utterly devastating, that I felt the air leave my lungs in a ragged gasp. Jenna handed Liam a small silver rattle and he hung it carefully from the mobile. His expression one of paternal tenderness I had yearned for and mourned for years. They were not just having an affair, they were building a family. They were staging a new life, and they had chosen one of my own creations as their theater. I did not scream, I did not pound on the door and demand an explanation. A strange, chilling calm descended upon me, a clarity born of absolute devastation. The pain was so immense it transcended tears and became a singular, sharp point of focus. They had used my designs to build their betrayal. Now, I would use my own meticulous design to orchestrate their demolition. The drive home was an automated blur. My body was functioning, but my mind was already drafting a new kind of blueprint. I walked into our perfect house, which now felt like a hollow, beautifully decorated set piece, and went straight to my office, locking the door behind me. Sleep was an impossible luxury. There was work to be done. My first step was to understand the financial architecture of their deceit. I logged into our company's secure servers, my fingers moving with a cold, detached precision across the keyboard. It didn't take long to uncover the full extent of the rot beneath our financial floorboards. 6 credit cards, 3 corporate accounts intended for business expenses, 3 personal joint accounts meant for our shared life were being systematically bled dry to fund this elaborate parallel existence. The statements were a nauseating diary of their affair. There were charges for the down payment on the house, for high-end designer furniture, for endless purchases from Bambini Bellissimi. They had been building their nest with my money, with the profits generated by my mind and my sleepless nights. I picked up my phone, my voice steady and devoid of inflection as I spoke to the first credit card company's fraud department. One by one, I reported each card as compromised and had them irrevocably canceled, effectively cutting off their supply line. The act was surgical, clean, and deeply satisfying. With their finances frozen, I delved deeper into the company's digital infrastructure. I was no longer just looking for evidence of an affair, I was looking for the scope of the conspiracy. I found it buried deep within a password protected partition on our main server, a digital vault Liam likely thought was his private domain. The folder was innocuously labeled Phase 2. My heart hammered against my ribs as I bypassed the simple encryption. Inside, there were no client contracts or project proposals. Instead, I found a meticulously detailed business plan for a brand new architectural firm, Hayes and Associates. My blood ran cold as I scrolled through the document. It was a blueprint for grand larceny on a corporate scale. They had stolen the intellectual property of Miller Hayes Designs, slightly modifying our logos and mission statement to create a flimsy disguise. They had copied the digital files of my most acclaimed and profitable projects, the very designs that had built our reputation and won us awards. On the list of principals for this new venture, Chloe was named as the lead design partner. My name, Sloan Miller, the name that had been the creative engine and co-founder of our firm for over a decade, was gone. It had been systematically and deliberately erased, as if I had never existed. The betrayal was no longer just personal, it was a professional assassination, a calculated plot to steal my life's work. The confrontation came not in the sterile quiet of our home, but in the heart of our creation, the glass-walled conference room at Miller Hayes Designs, a space where I had presented my most ambitious ideas. It was Monday morning. Liam and Jenna stormed in together, their faces flushed with a mixture of confusion and righteous indignation. They had spent a humiliating weekend discovering that their river of endless funds had suddenly run dry. "Sloan, what the hell is going on with the credit cards? Everything is being declined. You've made us look like fools," Liam demanded, his voice echoing in the minimalist space. A space I designed. Jenna stood beside him, her arms crossed, her expression a mask of manufactured outrage as if she were the victim. I let them vent. I listened in silence as they spoke of embarrassing moments at high-end stores and canceled dinner reservations, their complaints painting a pathetic picture of a life so privileged they couldn't comprehend its interruption. When they finally fell silent, their chests heaving, expecting an apology or a frantic explanation, I said nothing. Instead, with a calm, deliberate movement, I pushed a thick, neatly bound portfolio across the polished mahogany table toward them. It slid to a stop directly in front of Liam. He opened it with an air of impatience that quickly dissolved into stunned, horrified silence. The first pages were the itemized statements for the 6 credit cards I had canceled, every fraudulent purchase highlighted in a damning shade of yellow. Behind those were copies of the lease agreement for the house, signed by Chloe but funded by direct transfers from our company account. Then came her employment contract, with a salary grossly inflated for her position and experience, a clear misappropriation of company funds. And on the very top of the last section, displayed with stark clarity, I had placed a single printed page, the cover sheet of their Hayes and Associates business plan. Liam looked up from the documents, his face ashen, all the blustering anger gone, replaced by the raw, unmistakable look of pure panic. Jenna's jaw was slack, her eyes wide with the terror of being caught. It was in that profound, suffocating silence that I finally spoke, my voice calm and level, cutting through the tension like a surgeon's scalpel. "You wanted a new life, Liam," I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I'm just helping you clear away the old one to make room, so I canceled 6 credit cards. And I also filed a petition with the court this morning to dissolve our professional partnership, effective immediately, on the grounds of fraud and embezzlement." The reality of his situation, of the fact that I knew everything and had already acted decisively, washed over him. The foundation he had built on lies had just been pulled out from under him, and he was in free fall. The 6 months that followed were a masterclass in controlled demolition. The divorce and the dissolution of the firm proceeded with clinical efficiency. My legal team, led by a shark of a litigator who reveled in the mountain of evidence I had gathered, ensured the process was swift and brutal. I retained the rights to my own designs, the core intellectual property that had been the true value of Miller Hayes. The fight for our clients was the next battle. Liam, relying on his charm, tried to woo them over to his and Chloe's phantom company. But I had spent years building relationships based on trust and results, not just handshakes and expensive lunches. I met with each client personally, not to speak ill of Liam, but to present my vision for the future, a future built on integrity, the most important ones. The ones whose loyalty I had earned through years of dedication came with me without hesitation. Liam and Chloe made a desperate attempt to launch Hayes and Associates, but a brand built on stolen ideas and funded by mounting debt cannot survive. Without my name, my reputation, and my capital, their plans unraveled with spectacular speed. Lawsuits from unpaid contractors and vendors began to pile up. Their one or two remaining clients pulled out when they failed to deliver on their promises. I heard through the industry grapevine that they had to sell the house I designed, their dream home, to cover their legal fees. Their professional collapse was as swift as it was complete. Jenna, stripped of the status and lifestyle that my success had afforded her, faded into obscurity, her phone calls to me going unanswered. I, on the other hand, was not just surviving, I was building again, with a renewed sense of purpose. I founded a new firm, this time with only one name on the door: Miller Designs. The work was liberating, free from the need to compromise my vision or manage a partner's ego. My creativity flourished in a way it hadn't for years. The projects were bolder, more ambitious, and more fulfilling than ever before. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was standing on solid ground that was entirely of my own making. One crisp autumn afternoon, about a year after the dissolution, I was standing on the construction site of the community center, the passion project I had been working on the night my world fell apart. It was nearly complete. The frame was clad in warm wood and shining glass, a skeleton of steel now fully fleshed out, reaching for the sky. A cool breeze swept through the unfinished atrium, and I could vividly imagine the space filled with the laughter of children and the murmur of community, a place for new beginnings. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a long text message from Liam. I saw his name and felt not a spark of anger or a pang of sadness, just a distant, hollow echo of a life I no longer lived. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. It was a rambling, self-pitying apology, filled with cliches about regret, about not knowing what he had until it was gone, and ending with a desperate plea for a second chance. I read the words, and they felt like they were written by a stranger about a life that belonged to someone else. I thought about the man I had loved, the partner I had trusted, and the ghost he had become. Then, without a moment's hesitation, I deleted the message. I did not reply. The lesson I had learned through the fire of this betrayal was not about revenge or even forgiveness. It was about understanding where the true foundation lies. It isn't in a house, or a company, or another person. It lies within yourself, in your own integrity, talent, and resilience. They had tried to erase my name from my own blueprints, but they could never steal the vision of the architect who created them. My new vision was clear and expansive, and it no longer had any room for them or their ghosts. I was building again, from the ground up, and this time, the foundation was unbreakable.